I would like to start with a question for Ana, since you've just been talking. Ana, a number of people have asked the same question, but how does Wellcome define an early career researcher?
Yeah, so this is a question that we get a lot, and we actually have put a guidance on our web pages to sort of like help you to understand that. But essentially, it's really up to you. You know how how your career is, how is it progressing. So if you are someone who has just completed a PhD or an equivalent experience, for example, an equivalent 4-year research experience, then you are most eligible for an early career award. But if you're someone who has done that sort of like first steps after PhD and you're ready to establish yourself as an independent researcher, then think about the sort of like career development awards or even discovery awards. So it really depends. It's on a case by case basis. And I will share the guidance in the chat. I'll share the link to it.
Thank you for that. Another question that was asked multiple times is, do I have to have publications? And what does my publication record need to be to apply for Wellcome funding?
So we don't have strict criteria on how many publications you need to have. But obviously one of the criteria is that you have contributed to your research field. So how you have contributed, again, this really depends on what you do, what your field is. If this is social science, it would be quite different from, for example, molecular epidemiology. So there are a number of contributions that you can actually list, and publications are not the only thing.
Thank you. Sylvie, we enjoyed your presentation early this morning, so a lot of us watched your video and it was great. I think that you talked a little bit about, when we're putting together our application, about the differences between the milestones and things that we deliver and expected outcomes. Are you able to clarify what that meant? So what is a milestone in a research project? What is an outcome? And what is a deliverable? These are all sort of words that seem to describe similar things.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry, it's very early here. I can't put my video on. So I'm not sure if it's in my presentation where I talked about milestones and deliverables and outcomes. But I can talk about it if you'd like. So the way I see a milestone is actually a marker. Some type of a tangible mark that lets you know where you are in terms of where you are, your journey. So I'm taking an example, okay? So let's say that I live in Cameroon and I'm traveling from Douala to Yaoundé. That's 4 hours. And I know that there are, along the way, there are different stops. Like if you get to the first gas station, for example, you should have gone through about 60 kilometers of journey. So, and that should take you about 1 hour. So that's one milestone, the gas station. If, for example, your car is slow for some reason, and you know you're supposed to get to the gas station in 1 hour, but you get there in 90 minutes, then you know that you're actually slow in terms of your journey that is supposed to take you 4 hours. So that's what I consider a milestone, a marker along the way. If it's a project, it could be some type of timeline milestone or financial milestone or even scope milestone. So that's what I would call a milestone, a marker that tells you where you're supposed to be at what time along the journey. Now, in terms of a deliverable. Deliverable is actually something. Either it's an event or something that is tangible, that it can actually be measured in terms of what you're supposed to accomplish. So, for example, if in your research project you have objectives, and that your objectives is, for example, to enroll 1,000 research participants within 6 months. That's a deliverable. You're supposed to have the 1,000 participants enrolled in your study within 3 months. That's a deliverable, something that can be measured, something that is tangible. Now, in terms of outcome is what you want to see at the end of your project. If, for example, you're saying that your objective is to have come up with the incidence of tuberculosis in children in a particular area, that's your outcome. So at the end of your project, you want to have a number in terms of the incidence of tuberculosis in that area. Is that clear or?
Yeah, that's really helpful. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah. I guess, can I move on to Shekhar now with the next question? You talked a lot about the importance of community engagement. And one of the things that, I mean, kind of related to what we were just talking about for outcomes and impacts, community engagement is super important for making sure that we do get great outcomes and we do get good impact from the research that we're doing. The research is appropriate. But one of the things that a number of people have been asking about is, how do we fund this? Because you talked about making sure that you've got engagement before you even submit an application. Can you share from your experience how you've managed that?
Thank you so much, Katrina. On my last slide, I had shared one of the QR codes, which MESH has a resource on how to do the low cost and upstream engagement for research funding applications. So I would urge everyone to go take a look at that resource at MESH. But also I would like to highlight briefly on how as a researcher can conduct a low cost on upstream engagement. So first, I would say to know the community that you want to work with. Be part of that community. If you're part of that community, that means you can have the inputs of the community at a very, I would say, like normal sittings of the community. If we take example of Africa or a coast portion of Africa, they have like these things called baraza in the evening where people would sit and have coffee or something. So in those kind of settings, you can have the inputs without using a dime, but you are engaging with the community. You are giving them your ideas and you are receiving their views. And also, if you're planning to do a hospital-based research, make time to visit the hospital management, explain the idea, and they'll be able to help you. So the whole point here is just to make sure that you are engaging the community without being honest with them, transparency, selling out ideas, and they will answer to you on what you want to know, based on what you want to build on that study. But these inputs are very important because some of these inputs, if you present them to funders, they will be able to bridge fund for the idea that you want to do to the study, so that you can have a more deeper engagement inputs depending on the type of study or on the type of research that you want to do. But all in all, it's very important that to be part of the community and to be transparent of what we want to do and what do we expect from the community on implementing that study. Thank you.
I'm going to turn my mic back on. I would like to put the next question to anyone who's willing to answer it, really. So just open your mic if you're on the panel and you think you know, or you have some good advice. For someone, this is about career stage, for someone who's really early career, we've got a number of people in the audience who are like maybe doing a master's or still in their PhD. Where do you think, what do you think they should be doing to get started on this track of seeking independent funding from your experience? I'm going to go to you first, Ana.
Thank you. So I'm going to talk from my experience from being a PhD student. And I remember in these really early days, it was really, really tough to actually think about how am I going to become an independent researcher. And probably the best advice that I was given is try to obtain any funding, anything, however small, that there is, even if you just obtain a small amount of money to go to a conference or a small amount of money to sort of like buy, I don't know, an antibody or a little or anything in the lab, whatever it is your money and it is the money that you have independently procured. So that does count towards independence and shows your ability to actually be an independent researchers. But I'm sure other panelists have plenty of advice as well.
Yeah. Isabella, what would you advise?
Yeah, mine is similar. As much practice as you can get. So any small grant you can apply for that would augment the current work you're doing is good experience. Yeah, and get your supervisors to just support that process as well, because it's a value for them as well to show that you've supported one of your mentees or students to build their career as well. And it just builds your confidence with the small incremental grants that you get. It builds your confidence and just teaches you the process as well of writing and how to do it. So I totally agree with Ana. Whatever little funding you can apply for, or courses or anything that will help you with your career development at the moment, definitely go for it.
That's great. Sylvie, I wonder if you would be able to talk about not only for like individuals who are just getting started, I wonder if you've got any experience as well with organizations who are getting started, who maybe your university hasn't done tons of grants before, but they're starting. Do you have any advice for that situation?
Yes, can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, great. So for universities that don't have much experience in terms of grants, the first thing that I would do, what I think work, is actually establish a dedicated grant office, and that may be just one person that has experience in administering grants. That makes a big difference because you have this one centralized resource to help individuals that are either looking for grants, writing grants, obtaining grants, administering grants, running grants. So that's where I would start. If you don't have any experience at all in an institution, just establish a grant writing, a grant administration's office.
And in your organization, do you use any particular tools? A number of people have asked for things like what kind of softwares or project management tools do you use managing the process of these applications?
Yeah, there are many. In terms of it really depends on where you are, because I'm part of various institutions, like institutions that are quite well endowed and those that are not. In terms of project management software, I particularly use Microsoft Project. I've been using it for many, many, many years, and it has come a long way. And the other, it makes sense to also establish like a SharePoint account, so that different individuals anywhere in the world can have access to documents and work together. Those are the tools that are coming to mind right now.
Thank you. Shekhar, one of the questions that came through around community engagement was sometimes people seem to have experienced that the funders don't seem to recognize that the community members need to also receive funding. In your experience with doing community engagement work, have you been able to get funding for your community groups, and how do you position those community stakeholders in the grants themselves? Are they as collaborators? How does it work in terms of sharing funding?
Before I proceed, is Alan in the panelist?
Sorry, Evelyn, no, she's come
No,
through.
Alan Davis.
Check it out. Al was he was with us, but I think he's had to go off to do some tutoring, so he makes his apologies.
Okay, no problem. I'll proceed then. So I haven't applied for the grants as a solo applicant myself. Mostly I've been applying with senior researchers. I'm a master's graduate. And so normally it takes efforts and a lot of explanation to include in the budget or in the document on what you want to do, especially on community engagement. But what I would say that nearly the near years, maybe from 5 years back, the narrative has changed a very big time from the funders' perspective on community engagement. On earlier years, it was hard. But now funders are the one who is demanding. And I would say in a very simple language that we don't want to do research and shelf the results, because that's what most of the researchers done previously have been going about. The research is done, the results are out, and then they're shelved because the uptake of the community is low or none, zero. So now the funders have identified that gap. Now community engagement has been given an equal importance on the applications. So it's not hard to get the funding for community engagement. As it is, you can even not get the grant if you're not including community engagement, because the narrative has totally changed. Thank you. I hope I've answered the question.
Really powerful answer. Thank you. Anna, I would like to ask you to comment on that as well, and on how do you think Wellcome views community engagement and involvement of stakeholders in grants?
Yeah, so depending on which teams are developing studies, for example, in solutions, for example, we have the mental health team, which have lived experience advisors actually as part of their team, and take this extremely seriously and develop the studies very sort of with them. In the infectious disease team, we have started implementing this. So we implement or we always have community engagement as part of development of studies, but we don't have lead experience advisors as part of our team yet. But this is something that we'll shift soon. So yeah, I have to say that we take it very seriously, and we always involved the community. I hope that answers the question.
Thank you. Other panelists, do you have experience with community engagement and including that in grant budgets and project design?
Maybe, I mean, I'll just briefly add that for the welcome ones, there is a section on ensuring you've engaged the community in the study. And I totally agree with Sheha that it really does enrich the application, because when you go on to implement the project, it's so much easier when you've done it earlier, or you've co-created with the community the question and how you'll do the implementation. So ensuring that their voice is heard on the how will be really important. I think those are lessons learned. If you try and do it after the fact, after you've got the money, it's so much harder, and it takes a lot more time for you to start implementing the project. Thanks.
Thank you. I know Evelyn has had trouble joining, so she's not able to be here just yet for the collaboration stuff, but I do want to get to some of the questions that we received around managing equitable collaborations, because it's a really important and interesting topic. So one of the first ones I have here, someone has been asking, well, actually several people asked versions of the same question, which is how do I manage collaborations where maybe I've got the wrong people on my team? How can I make sure that that my collaboration is either not predatory? Someone actually used the term predatory leadership during collaboration, which is where they're collaborating with someone and that person feels like it feels to them like the other person is taking all the credit. And others are saying, well, I've got collaborators, but they're just not doing my bit. And I think this is, teamwork is hard always, but so how can we make sure that our collaborators are pulling their weight as well? What does a good collaboration look like? Let's just be specific, like at the grant application stage in your experience. Isabella, do you have any experience that you could share here?
I think so. I think the collaboration shouldn't start when you're writing the grant. Collaboration should be something that has been developed beforehand, and it's all about trusted relationships and synergies between collaborators or between partners. And people you potentially know either from your mentor, your supervisor, or yourself amongst your own peers, ensuring that there's a relationship where both sides feel value and they'll gain a lot from it. Sometimes even if you're sort of feeling that you're junior to the collaborator, then ensuring you still gain value from it. So that could be the experience of writing the grant or doing a particular assay or engaging the community or whatever your role will be, but ensuring that it's a win-win situation. And that could only happen when you've had this relationship prior to writing the application or prior to thinking about it. Sometimes it's really hard when you come in cold turkey or you've just met the person to start saying, how do we write this grant? If you do, then it means you sort of need some contractual arrangement, which is a bit, I would say, I don't know if it's a bit superficial. So it's a bit difficult to determine how the journey will go along the way. But it's so much easier when you've struck up a rapport and there's a good relationship ongoing for you to have a successful grant. So that's one of that would be my view. However, sometimes you'll get introduced to somebody because your supervisor said this is a really great person to work with. They'll grow your career. And that's particularly when you're up and coming. You need your mentor to open that door for you and have that it could be the big name in the field, or just somebody who's well known in that in the area you want to develop. So in that case, again, you take the word of your supervisor who knows that there's some trusted relationship there, I believe. And so for you at the junior level, it's important for you then to just step up and make sure that you're also performing, because that door was opened for you by your supervisor. Because for them to open the door, they also think you're capable enough. So ensuring that you express your capability, but you also deliver. So yeah, I think there are sort of those two angles, because sometimes you need that not forced, but sort of introduced relationship, and then you've got to make it work. And sometimes when you can, it's so much easier when you've developed that relationship. That's my view. Thanks.
Thank you. Shekhar, Sylvie, do either of you have any other experiences to share?
No, I agree with whatever Isabel has said, but I would also add that the good collaboration first, you have to have a mutual mutual interest on what you're doing. Because I would speak from the aspect of early or mid-career researcher. Sometimes we lose vision on what we want to do because on this side you don't get grant, on the side you don't get the scholarship to pursue PhD. On the other side, it's just you're focusing on just to get to get going on your career, but everything is just like a kind of block. So sometimes you can lose the track on what you really want to do, or what your interest is, and that could land you in a collaboration which you feel like it's not impactful to you, or it's not of a common interest. But having a mutual, you have to align the ideas or the interest that you have. Is it the same that on the collaboration that you're getting? But also you have to do the equitable contribution. I've seen in one of the comments, or one of the questions is that what if a junior scientist gets a collaborator, but the collaborator is doing the minimal work? So that one, I could somehow relate, but also I could talk about it positively, because some of the mentors or the supervisors, they're not doing minimal. They just want you to push harder. They want you to do more so that you can grow. So that is also very important. At what limit can you push yourself to make sure that you accelerate on the career and to get where you want to go using the collaboration that you have?
Yeah, I think that's right. There can often be a role to play in stepping aside to make space for the early career researchers to fill and grow into. Ana, I know that Wellcome has a lot to say these days around equity and collaborations and equitable partnerships. And I wondered if you could just talk about this a little bit, about what, if you were receiving an application, what would you be looking for that would demonstrate to you that this was probably going to be an equitable partnership?
Yeah, so when we receive an application, the roles and responsibilities of everyone applying needs to be stated very clearly, and that's how we that's what we have, and that's how we assess. If they are not stated very clearly, then that's the red flag. Or if, for example, role of someone vastly exceeds, for example. So we take that actually quite seriously when we are discussing the application, especially the committee as well. Another thing that it's important to flag is also the, for example, if studies, for example, contain different researchers from different countries, it's important to actually ensure equitable partnership there as well. And this is very clearly, you can sort of see that also from the budget that goes to sort of like the main awarding institutions versus the other collaborating institutions. So we look at that quite seriously as well. So we have sort of like various ways of looking at these equitable partnerships. It's also an area that is still evolving at Wellcome. We have recently opened a department at Wellcome just purely for equity. So it's still evolving, but we are sort of take that equity a little bit more into account when we're assessing application for sure.
Thank you. Another theme in the comments was AI. A lot of people have mentioned it. It's all anyone ever wants to talk about when you go to a conference or anything these days, for good reason, because obviously these AI tools are available, they're accessible, and they're good, right? I know we have already linked to Wellcome's guidance around the use of AI in the comments, so you can go and check that out. It's freely available on the website. But I wondered whether we could start a little bit of a discussion among those of us who are here in the panel today. It's not hard and fast guidance, but people's experiences and people's feelings. But one of the questions here, for example, is it okay to use AI or ChatGPT to polish your grant proposal? What do we think? Do any of you guys have a strong opinion, or should I call on you? Sylvie, have you used it?
I do use AI. I use ChatGPT, but I do not use it as a first point of writing, because it's extremely obvious to a trained eye when you have used AI to come up with a piece of writing. It's extremely obvious. And if you use AI, it will be at your own risk because I have seen disasters. This is a robot. It's just a lot of information pieces that are put together. So it may work, it may not work. But somebody who actually has a trained eye, who is an expert, it jumps to the eye that AI was used. So I use it, but I use it sparingly, and I could use it maybe for inspiration, but I would not just cut and paste what comes from ChatGPT into a document, because it shows that it's not original. It's very, very obvious.
I mean, one of the questions that came up was specifically in response to Isabella's presentation. And the question was, I know good writing comes with practice and that reading helps, but how do you know when it's the right time to start writing instead of just reading? And since we're now in the era of AI, how can beginners make sure they use it ethically as they learn to write? What thoughts do you have about that, Isabella?
Let me try and enter this generation of AI. I guess in my mind, when you're writing a proposal, you've gone to read around the topic. Because, okay, I've got this particular idea that I'm thinking about. And for you to determine whether there's a line of question to follow, you'll go and read around the topic. So back in our day, you would go onto PubMed and do the searches and get, all this literature out. Now, I suppose it's much easier. So you could use AI to help you pull out the literature. You could, I suppose, ask AI to summarize it, I think. Never tried it, so I'm just talking, but I'm not sure. But at the end of the day, for you to put forward that compelling argument, you needed to have done the reading, synthesize the literature in accordance to what your line of questioning was or what you've been discussing with your peers, to come out with that compelling pitch of what you want to, of the idea you're trying to sell, because the idea is yours. I suppose you could start framing things yourself and then ask AI to try and, sharpen it a bit. But I do agree with Sylvia that, when it comes, you've got to check that it has that human touch to it. And then a lot of the people these days are so primed, those who are reviewing are looking at whether you've actually done the work. So that's why I think there's such a tight balance. And tweaking a couple of sentences maybe, but not the whole document. Because people want to see the face behind the writing, and some of it just comes up in your style. I also know that you can probably give AI a lot of your writing to figure out your style. I've heard. I've not done it myself, but this is what I've heard. So I think there's a place to use it, maybe to help you get, do the literature searches, and then you do the reading, perhaps to help you summarize a few things. But at the end of the day, you still have to go look through it and make sure that the messaging and the thread of the story is all there, and all the compelling pieces are there. So it has its value, but I think the beginning and all the groundwork still has to be the individual, because you're the one who comes up with the research question and not AI. That's my thought, but yeah.
Yeah. Anna, I know Wellcome asks for people to declare their use of AI. And what would be a red flag for you? I mean, obviously a red flag would be if something read like it was written by AI. And as Sylvie says, you can tell sometimes that something's written by AI and it wasn't declared. That's an obvious one. But is there any, just to flip it around, would there ever be a red flag because somebody hadn't consulted AI?
Oh, it's an interesting question. I can't imagine a situation for that. However, we do, as you said, we do ask researchers to declare the use of AI and the application, but they don't have to if, for example, they want to improve the standard of English in the applications. In that way, they don't. And for example, if we see that, for example, the standard of English could be improved in application to make it stronger, that would be a case, for example, actually AI would have helped, and it's actually useful for these purposes. So it really depends. So using generative AI to write your application, you need to declare that. But in general, I think it's been said, would not advise that. It's very obvious when you read that application that it's been written by AI. But if you write yourself the application and you just want to improve the standard of English, then yes, you can.
Yeah. I think there is one place where, in my experience, AI use is helpful, and it's not in writing your application. It's actually in the other hot topic in the questions, which is searching for opportunities. So there is no such thing for free available in the world of a list of all grant applications that I'm aware of all grant opportunities. The thing is this is myself answering the many questions that came in response to my session, which was how do I find opportunities. There's no sort of single list. You do have to be connected. You have to know who is funding research in your specific area of interest. So I'm going to give you my tips for how to find that out. My first one is, because you are reading a lot of research papers, right? They always state who funded the research. And so that's really the best place for you. You figure out who funded that research that was good competitive research that I'm interested in, that I'm citing. That's likely to be a funder that could be relevant for you. So that's your first place to start. Second place to think about from my point of view is who's funding your colleagues, your peers. What kind of opportunities are you seeing other people get in your networks? And these might be small, they might be large. People say, how do I get a small grant or a travel grant? Well, where do you want to go? If you're wanting to go to a particular conference, there might be a travel grant related to that conference. What there's not likely to be is a random travel grant for no particular purpose, because people just don't give money away for that. But one place to search for information, both for information about new grant opportunities that you don't know about, is on AI. So the grants teams, my grants teams, and lots of my grant management colleagues actually use this now to help their researchers find grant opportunities, and they find it better than searching Google or something, or searching in other databases. The AIs have already done the Google search for you, and then they can summarize it. So that's a really good place to look and use that as a tool for looking for opportunities. It's also really good for helping you to decipher some of the dense language in a grants opportunity to determine your eligibility. So this is one other thing that some of our teams do is use the AI software to read the grant call and to read all the accompanying documents and ask very specific questions of it around, would I be eligible in this particular circumstance? And the AI, usually it gets it right. Now you'd want to check and see what it references, but those are actually great ways that you can use AI. It's not coming up with your ideas, it's not writing your proposal for you, but it can be supporting some of those background activities in your proposal. Have any of you guys used it for that? Maybe not yet. Okay. For the final question to go through, I think we should talk a little bit about budgets, because I did get quite a few budget questions. Sorry, just let me look through my document. So one of the things that people asked, one of the questions we got that I thought was very interesting is, how do you balance funders' expectations with the realities of project delivery? So for example, you know, sometimes the funder thinks that the project can be delivered for a relatively small amount of money, and then in reality, when you're actually running it, it doesn't necessarily go that way. And related to that was another question around, well, how do you communicate about problems? So if something's going wrong in your project, what do you tell the funder? I won't go straight to the funder, but I might come to you at the end, Ana. But Isabella, do you have any thoughts around this?
Start with the problem one. Usually with your grant, you probably have a project manager assigned to you from the funder, and they most of the time check in and, you know, how progress, or you're able to give annual progress reports. So I think it's at that point where you can be transparent, especially if, you know, there's been delays in starting up your study, like you're in the field and you couldn't access, there was a strike, or I don't know, there was a flood and you couldn't access your field sites or whatever. Yeah, giving that information as early as possible, because that also delays your engagement with the community and how you get started, is a good thing to do. And you use your the person assigned to you from the funders, from the funding organization. So just clear communication is helpful. That can just be an email, or if you do your regular check-ins or in the annual progress report. But it's probably better to do it before the annual progress report, so that you can explain why things have taken much longer than expected, because that generally tends to happen. Then there's the question on the budgets. I guess it depends. If you're writing for a grant and there's a particular cap on how much you can spend, then that's what it is. So you've got to work your grant to be feasible within that. So we've had experiences where you've put in a grant application and you're told it's ambitious, and you think, oh, I thought I could do that. But it's the feedback you get, and so you just have to work within the constraints of the budget, of the grant requirements, to make sure that you're successful. And I think the main aim of it as well is to really think about, when you're writing the grant application, what can I do in the particular time period you've been given and the budget you've been given. So it's about probably doing a reality check and being a bit realistic with what you can do with the idea you're thinking about, or the proposal that you're putting together. So the constraints do help. Otherwise, as I said, you can be overly ambitious and then not hit your targets. So there's some value to having some constraints. Thanks.
Thank you. Sylvie, do you have any experience with either of these issues, where the funders have expectations that maybe don't feel reasonable to you as a researcher, or the other one?
No, it's okay. I understand your question. It is true that particularly as African researchers, the funders, especially those that are not familiar with the environment, would not always have an accurate and realistic idea of how things are actually on the field. But unfortunately, they hold the purse strings. So whatever the funder gives you in terms of a money amount, you have to fit into it. That might mean that you may have to reduce your scope of work. So for example, this is just an example. Let's say that they ask you, they give you money to buy a Pinto. I don't know if you guys know what a Pinto is. It's a long time ago, it was a very bad car, like a very small, non-expensive car. But then they're expecting to see a Mercedes. That is not reasonable. And there is no, even if you try to fit into it, you will end up failing. So it's up to you to build your case for using the budget the way that you're seeing it. And that also comes with documentation. So, for example, how much a statistician will cost you in terms of salary on your team in your environment. So come up with the background information and documentation that shows that, yes, in your environment, this is how much a statistician is paid. They may ask you to do some field work, and you have to take into consideration many of us in Africa don't have our own cars, so you have to take into consideration renting, transportation, and you just bring the documentation, and that backs up the amounts that you put in your budget, and that usually helps. But you have to be realistic. Don't overpromise. There's no point, because in the end, you're building your record as an investigator, meaning that you have to protect your integrity, because that's what will take you a long way. So don't promise things just because you want the funding right now. Remember that you have a long career and everything that you do follows you.
It's really interesting. Ana, how do you think, from a funder perspective, how should we be communicating challenges with funders?
How should researchers communicate? Yeah. So it's basically what Isabella said. You get assigned someone who looks after your grant, and it's very, very important that you're transparent with them and open. We are not going to take away the funding. If anything, we're going to help. So we heard about challenges from many, many researchers. We have a lot of, our program managers have a lot of experience. And so they can find other solutions or ideas of how to help. And that's why it's very important that when challenges do arise, you do communicate them. So do not, please just do it. In terms of budget, can I just comment on that briefly? I think what is important to understand that also funders, they don't have a bottomless pit of money. And we are also struggling to we have a budget as well. And we're trying to make the most of it. And we do assign a certain cap to the budget. That is because of that, because we're trying to fund a number of studies with that budget that was assigned to us. So we are all constrained. And I do agree with what Isabella said, that constraint is useful because it helps you to focus. We want ambitious projects, but we also want projects that actually focus to ensure that actually you do get somewhere. So it's a healthy balance between the two.
Yeah, I think that's right. And I think that an infinite amount of money doesn't necessarily produce better research outcomes. You know, that we need the creativity sometimes that being hungry forces us to bring, and that's not a bad thing, not always. Okay, so we're beginning to be out of time, and I would just like to go around the group of the remaining presenters, and for the remaining audience, which I believe is still pretty big, there's 600 people on the call here. What advice do you have? If you could give one take-home message to the people on the call, maybe particularly to those of our early career researchers or who are just starting out doing this for the first time, what advice or words of encouragement do you have? Sylvie, can we start with you?
Oh, no problem. So I'm sorry I could not attend earlier because it's you guys started at 3 a.m. where I am. So I'm sorry about that. And I also heard that the sound on my presentation was not optimal. I apologize for that. So next time I'll know what to do when I'm recording. And thank you for your grace. So in terms of advice, I heard since I came into the Zoom call, the meeting, I heard somebody talk about the small grants. The biggest advice I have for those early career researchers is do not underestimate the small grants. I call them low-hanging fruits because they are easier to obtain. And one of my first grants was for about 15,000 US dollars. And that 15,000 US dollars, I ended up writing, I think, 2 different articles, and that ended up being like a projector for me. So even if you think, oh, this is a very small amount of money, even if it's $5,000 or 5,000 euros, if you you do a very small research project, but just you can magnify it by the way you disseminate your results, and you make yourself more visible to attract larger grants, and even just to attract collaborations, to attract more seasoned partners. So do not overlook what I call the low-hanging fruits, the smaller grants, because they are easier to obtain and the impact is a lot more than the amount of money.
Thank you, thank you, thank you for getting up in the middle of the night to come and share your wisdom with us today. I think it's really a great privilege to hear from you. Ana, what from your experience as a researcher, as working for a funder, what advice do you have?
Well, similarly, I would say for early career research, do not underestimate what your contribution can bring to a team of researchers, a consortia. You're incredibly valuable just because established researchers, for example, would be lead PIs. That doesn't mean that your contributions are any less. So just getting there, don't be shy, don't be afraid, be part of the big teams because it will be very rewarding.
Thank you. Thank you for joining us, and thank you for that insight. Oh, my dog's going nuts. Isabella.
Thank you. Mine would be just to encourage those who are getting onto the journey, at whatever stage, master's, PhD, even early postdocs, to just keep reading. It enriches your writing, and to keep writing as well. I think that's the trick. My own experience was, when you keep writing the manuscripts, you keep writing the proposals, and ensuring that you've got a good peer review system, friendly peer review system in-house, with your colleagues, or with ensuring you utilize your supervisors and your research community to help you along the way. And the second big piece is keep going. The rejection does come. It's part of the research career journey, but don't let it knock you down. You just dust yourself off and you just keep going. And so just take it as part of the journey, and it's not about you. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you, Isabella. From myself, I would say, I'm not a researcher. I'm an administrator. I've done a little bit of research somehow on the side, and I still continue to, but that's because opportunities show up in life. And I think that my advice for everyone here, particularly those who are starting out and don't necessarily know which way your path is going to take, is think about where you can contribute. It may not be, maybe we all want to get the big grant, we all want to get the big opportunity, but if you're thinking about building your network and building your relationships and building your community, think about what you can contribute to others, because the more that you do, the more that you give, the more that you collaborate with other people, the more it comes back to you, in my experience. And that those who are really successful are also those who are very generous with their time and with their energy and with their ideas. So that's my personal advice. I think we're out of time, so I would like to start to wind up. So today I would like to get feedback from you. We'd appreciate your feedback on today's webinar through the Global Health Network survey. Your input will help us assess how well this event went, how well it met your learning needs, and help us to improve future sessions as well and understand what you've gained. I'd really like to thank all of you in the audience for participating, and that is those of you who are in the Zoom, as well as those who are joining in the live stream on YouTube. There are many, many people joining today, and it's wonderful to be able to talk to all of you. Thank you to our panelists. It has been a great privilege to be able to hear from you and to be able to learn from your experience, and we really appreciate you giving your time and giving your energy to this workshop. There are plans for a second workshop, and that will be a second day on the workshop. It was originally scheduled for tomorrow, but that will be rescheduled later. We've received many, many comments and questions, way more than I can read, for this session. So we'll gather all of those together and we will ask our panel to respond in writing. The recording of this session, along with additional materials, will be shared, and the link to where you'll be able to find these will be posted in the chat now. So thank you very much to the panelists. Thank you to you in the audience for your participation, and we will now close the session. Goodbye, everybody.